You're still watching Breakfast Central, and now we go straight to our top stories, and we will be talking about the EAC meeting over the conflicts in eastern DR Congo. Now, East Africa over the past month have been in the news, from the Ebola outbreak in Uganda, the bomb blast in Somalia, and of course the conflict rocking the DRC. And this morning on Breakfast Central, we are joined by Darren Birdlett for analysis on the latest development in East Africa. Thank you so much, Darren. Good morning for joining us.
Good
Darren,
morning. Thank you for having me.
Okay, our pleasure. And now, Darren, let's go straight to the EAC meeting that we're expecting in Eastern DR Congo. Now, we hear that the East African army leaders are planning on meeting to find solutions on how to end the conflict, especially the FARDC, the M23 in DRC. So do you think that finally this will end the insurgencies in the DRC?
Well, the good thing is that it's now the first time that all the countries of the East Africa come together and form an East African Community Force, which they agreed on in June when the presidents met and said, apart from having things like custom unions, free movement of people, how do we then have, to stabilize the issue of security in East Africa so that the people can also benefit from that? By then, East Africa didn't have a lot of issues, security issues, apart from the Al-Shabaab that bombed Kampala, that bombed Nairobi, have been to, Tanzania. So apart from that, there was no major threat in terms of rebel activities in the bloc until when DRC came and joined East Africa community, making it the seventh country to join the bloc. When they came on, they had to respond to the issues that are happening in DRC. Now, DRC alone, for most people who don't know, this is the information that I can tell you, that there are over 100 bandits registered in there. They are known who go on killing people apart from rebels. So if you have 100 different groups that are fighting for minerals, fighting for, others are fighting to take power, like the M23, they want to claim a certain region of Congo, or probably even suggest that they should cut it off so that Congo becomes, they get two countries out of DRC. But this was troubling to the East African region because one of the reasons Uganda, Tanzania, Kenya, and South Sudan, Rwanda, and Burundi accepted DRC to be on board is for trade issues. So there was no way you were going to have a peaceful trade relationship with DRC when you have rebel activities such as the ADF, who ran from Uganda into DRC. You have the M23, who are always off and on. At one moment in 2013, they had an agreement and they kind of disappeared and then showed up again last year, causing a lot of insurgencies in the eastern part of DRC, which is around North Kivu. And then here is a situation where Uganda, Kenya were already having an interest in DRC in terms of building roads to be able to access the markets in Goma. Now, when the president sat down in Nairobi in June, they agreed that it is important we form an East African force. Now, they had not yet decided to enter DRC until just last week when they decided to say, let's meet, let's agree on the forces that we are going to put in DRC, let's stabilize DRC so that we can be able to have people who are not, basically the most important thing here is trade, that these countries look at it, so that we have a stable trade relationship with DRC. Now, before they even met, Kenya has already made a decision and has already flagged off a troop of about 1,000 soldiers who will be landing there anytime from yesterday. And that whole force was already led by Major General Jeff Nyanga. Now, the KDF and the UPDF and the Tanzanian Defense Force and the Burundi, which have already committed to see that they send the troops there, will meet this week, or even today, or probably tomorrow. But they're going to meet before Sunday and agree on the number of forces that they are going to send in there. At least they have already agreed on principles. One of the principles is who is going to lead their forces, but also two, they have agreed with the demands of DRC that say that they don't want the RPF to be part of the forces. The RPF is the Rwanda Patriotic Force of Rwanda, which they're already accusing of supporting the M23.
Yeah, and you know, it's a good place to land actually, because if you remember the origins of the Allied Democratic Forces, you know, there's also insinuations that they were supported by Sudan in efforts to, you know, fight Museveni's government back then in the 90s. And pretty much the same thing, you know, that Rwanda has been accused of now, supporting the M23 rebels. But hopefully you can chip in on that, you know, before we go. But I want us to talk, you know, and focus on Somalia now. The security situation is really, really heartbreaking. If you remember, of course, sometime last week, the bomb explosion, or early this week actually, bomb explosion that killed more than 100. There's also plans of them joining the East African community and equally calling for international help to, you know, assist with, you know, terrorism after that twin blast that left more than 100 dead. What would you say is the exact type of help that Somalia might need?
Somalia needs all kind of help that can be given to it to stabilize the country. First of all, we've had them calling for help from the East African the forces, even when Somalia itself has not yet joined East Africa, but there have been certain relationships that have been having, like trade. And Uganda and Burundi, Rwanda itself had some forces go to Somalia under the AMISOM, which was the AU mission in Somalia, which now is called the African Union Transition Mission. It just changed names, but the protocols are still the same. The difference here is that they have been able to kind of train the Somalian army and you know, empower them to be able to fight people like the Al-Shabaab. But there's different help that they need. First of all, they need financial assistance because the country has crippled down. They need assistance in terms of medical supplies because President Sheikh Mohammed there was calling on to even the WHO, which is the World Health Organization, the UN, the AU itself, the East African bloc, to give them medical supplies to airlift those who were affected into different countries for at least treatment, you know, to give them a lot of supplies in terms of also ammunition to be able to fight the Al-Shabaab, who have become rampant ever since this new president came into power. And I'm not saying that he's the problem. I'm just talking about what has been registered in his regime. We've had a hotel that was bombed not so far, about 3 months ago, and they had casualties coming up to around 20. Now, this time you have about 300 casualties, about 100 dead and others injured. So they want intelligence support, they want financial support, and also they want more security to be able to help them and stabilize the country, because as it is now, Somalia has been named as a bedrock of, you know, terrorists who are, you know, they just want to see that they finish up whatever mission they have.
All right, Darren, I want to take us back a little bit. When you talked about building a stable trade relationship in the DRC, with all of the conflicts that have been recorded in recent times, do you think that after all this conflict dies down, it's attainable? Do you think it's possible to build that stable trade relationship?
Yes, it is possible. First of all, Uganda is building a 223-kilometer road into Congo. And the reason why Uganda was building that road is they had established that DRC, especially the eastern part of DRC, imports a lot of things that Uganda can provide them. 1, milk; 2, meat; 3, tea, coffee, and all that. And Kenya is able to take its oil as far as DRC. Let's hope that Uganda is able to extract its oil as well in the near future. They'll also be able to trade with DRC, taking their oil to DRC. Now, you cannot trade with DRC in the eastern part of DRC, especially where the M23 are based, where the Allied Democratic Forces are based, and other rebel groups or terrorism groups that are in DRC, when you just cannot have a peaceful trade with such a place that is filled with a lot of insecurity. So yes, once the forces are there, and once DRC has no problem with the forces that are being deployed there, because it has always been raising questions. Even yesterday in the parliament of DRC, they were raising questions and saying that probably Uganda could also be helping M23, something that the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Cyril Onek, denied and said, we are only in DRC to fight the ADF. Now, once the DRC agrees the level of forces or the number of forces that is in DRC to help them fight the insurgencies, definitely trade is going to be a win for all the countries in East Africa. Yes, I agree with that.
Well, Darren Bartlett, thank you very much for the extensive knowledge that you have on the East African part of the continent. And of course, we would love to speak with you again. We hope that these collaborations between these countries do bring some peace to East Africa. And of course, we can also spread pretty much the same impact across the continent. Thanks once again for joining us.
Thank you so much, Darren, for joining us.